Hey gang, welcome back to another template design walkthrough. Name of this design is Strikezone. So this could be a great one for the baseball, softball season coming up here. So let's jump into the layer stack and let's look at the options in here to see how we customize this. Alright, starting at the top, as usual, is our color grading layers. There's just a couple in if you expand this group, but they are adding some color and contrast work to give it that final polished look. As always, you could turn those off or on, change opacities as needed. Below that is our facial highlight boost. These are designed to boost the highlights on the faces of the subjects. Bottom one is preset for lighter skin. Top one's preset for darker skin tone. And it's simply just painting on this mask with white, but we can take a look at that with a subject in just a minute. All right, dropping on down below that, we have a couple clipped layers. So this is our smog or our smoke and fog layer. With some color change clip to it. So if we turn this top one off, you're going to see it's just going to give that normal white smoke type of look. So you could turn that off and on here. But if we turn this or leave this top layer on, we just have some color options we can do. I like to use, for this kind of thing, a hue saturation adjustment layer because it gives you more control over the color by adding this lightness slider in here in the saturation. All right, so this would be as simple as just moving this slider to the color tone you want, adding the level of contrast you want, and then changing the brightness. If you wanted it to have a little bit more of those bright smoky highlights showing through, you can pull that brightness up a little bit, or you could bring it down if you wanted it to be, you know, a little bit more transparent and see-through. All right, so that's there. Let's just go ahead and reset that. Coming down below that, we have a couple of layers clipped to our subject group. You'll notice the subject group is always marked in red. And we have, starting with this top one here, this is doing some lightening of the lower subject. You'll see what that does in just a minute, but it's basically to kind of match the vibe of the black and white environment that's created in here. And then just some darkening of the lower legs just to give them some shading to feel placed in there. So like I said, the red's going to mark where the subject goes, so you can expand this group, and you can see the subject goes right here. We'll turn our sample subject on in just a second. All right, if we go on down for that, you're going to see we have a layer clipped to this text. So text up here just has this sky texture, which is just designed to match and mimic this movement, you know, cloud movement in the sky up here, which I think looks pretty cool. So that's just normal text. As always, the links to the sample fonts that I use are in the product page, so those are linked there. Coming down below that is just some backlight, so just brightening that background up to lift it and make your subject stand out more. But that could be, you could change that opacity or turn that off or on as needed. And now below this, we got a couple layers clipped down to this home plate. So the home plate is its own layer that could be turned on or off if so desired. But then above that, we have some desaturation that's happening to make that black and white. And then it's just masked for that outer edge of that home plate to colorize that, which I think is pretty cool. And that's just a simple color picker. You could come in here and pick any color to match that up. And if we go on down, you're going to see a few more layers clipped down to our background. So let's go ahead and expand our background layers, and then we'll look at what's happening here. So in the background layers, this platform and dirt layer is actually up on its own layer. So you could turn that off and turn the home plate off and just have kind of that like dirt infilled type of look. All right, but let's turn this back on, turn our home plate back on. You're going to see attached to this is some layers doing a few things. So let's start at the top. So this boost background contrast, that's what's bringing some of those black values back up where they need to be, because I really wanted to create kind of this washed out type of tone, so I had to do it in a few layers. Under that is just our desaturation of the background, so that's what's going to bring color back into it. And below that is some brightening, which is happening again to wash that out more. All right, so the reason the home plate has the desaturation is because you could always turn that off, and you could actually use this as a full color background if you want. So it doesn't have to be black and white. It's just preset that way because I think it looks pretty cool myself. All right, so let's turn these back on. And let's go ahead and just minimize that subject. or that group, and let's go up and turn our subject on. So expand this, let's turn our sample subject on. So this one can be used if we wanted to resize our subject as a no feet option. I like to just simply bring the subject up, drop the legs down in, and I still think that in it of itself is a really cool look right there. So very easy to just fade them down into that smoke and have that kind of look. Or you could leave them small and make them look like they're standing out here on this, which I also think looks really cool. I would just add some shadowing in here. So what I like to do is just add a blank layer. I just do my shadows pretty simply. I try not to fuss with them too much. But what I do is just take a black brush with the hardness set to 0. And then I like to bring the flow down a little bit, somewhere under 50%. And then I'm just going to take my brush. The first thing I like to do is just paint in like a ground contact shadow. So something that just fades out under each foot here a little bit. Alright, so that's number one. The second thing I like to do is add another layer, and then I'm going to make this brush a little bit bigger. Since this has a backlight, I'm just going to bring a couple shadow strokes forward. So one there, simple as that. And then one more layer where I'm going to add a little bit of color or shadow cast across the subject's body. And if I did one more quick one, it would just be to add another layer and then just add a little bit more dark shadowing directly under the feet right there. And that's as quick as I like to do my shadows. So I think it is enough that it sells the look of it, and it's really quick and easy to do. So that's what I like to do. But if we look at the subject layer, let's turn these off so you can see what's happening. This is that lightened lower subject I was talking about. This is what's creating that washed out type of tone that's matching that background up more. But then it's fading up, so you're getting that nice contrast of your subject against the background at the top here. And then this darkening of the lower subject is really for if you have them 3/4. So in other words, let's turn our shadow layers off here. If we would make her bigger again and bring her down this way. So let's say we wanted to do the 3/4 look like this. Then this darken lower is what's darkening the legs down here to blend in behind that smoke more. Alright, so that's why you won't really see that doing anything if you're using the feet up here in the image, but it's doing a lot down here for the lower legs in this case. Alright, so let's reset this. Let's go ahead and just leave our subject there, and let's change this color, right? So there's just a couple spots in here that we want to look at. First is this foreground smoke. So let's come up here to our smoke fog color, and I would just want to push the hue all the way over to more red. Maybe add a little bit more contrast, and maybe bring the lightness down a little bit. Alright, just to give a little bit like that. And then in the text, that's easy enough as well. We're just going to go to the text itself. We could double click on here, and we could change the text. Let's apply that, Command or Control T. I'm just going to resize that by holding Shift Option or Shift Alt. Let's bring it up just a hair. Alright, click Apply. And then I'm just going to pick the color, and I could come out here and I could either try and sample a subject color. That one looks pretty good. That one looks pretty good. Or I could come just, manually kind of push this around and see what I like. A little bit more brightness to it. There we go. That looks pretty sweet. Now the last place is down here, this home plate. Like I said, has that edge colorized. I am going to go ahead and let's bring that up to red, just to bring that color in there as well. There we go. Pretty cool. The last thing that I would do, I really don't think this subject needs it because she's got nice bright highlights on the face, but this is where you could come in with a white brush if you wanted to brighten any of those highlights up even more, and just brush that in and then change your opacity, to where you wanted it. But for this particular one, I think it looks pretty good as is. So there we go. Other than changing the names. Oh, if I could spell. There we go. Simple enough. And that one's changed and ready to go. So, hope you get a ton of use out of it. I can't wait to see how you use it. As always, please share. I love to see what you're doing, and I will see you on the next one.